us at DataFeel, we develop multi-energy haptic technology. So you're going to be working with our development kits, but basically we span Canada and the US. We've got quite an advanced patent portfolio. Some really smart people in the team, and we are still early in our stages of the company, but we have raised a decent amount of money there. But the real thing with us is we started because we realized that haptics is almost entirely vibration, and it's been good, but it's also been around for in that same form factor for decades and hasn't really changed. And we wanted to start taking things that are in a relatively big market but still simple, and start actually using more about what our bodies are capable of. Because in our skin, we've got different nerves for each different energy type, whether that's thermal, vibration, electric, pressure. So we wanted to really be able to activate all of these things, and use and have the human body as kind of a low resolution monitor, to take in and enhance any type of experience, but also go into things such as like regulating mood, increasing focus, managing pain, reducing inflammation, and really kind of advancing human health and thriving and wellness. So everything we do, we try to incorporate more than one energy type at a time. So our dev kits that you'll be using are vibration, heat, cold, light all together. And we're going to go into a whole bunch of different form factors. I'll skip through this, but basically our dev kit, and we'll show you the actual real ones. You can see them in front, but it's multi-energy haptics that come in the sort of form of these dots. They can generate heat and cold that can change around 2 degrees per second, depending on conditions, but that's going up by 2 degrees, down by 2 degrees, and we can have them start to get closer to freezing temperatures, and then we have to limit it on the hot so that nobody gets burned or any of those things. But then it does light, vibration. We also have a wide range of frequencies between about 150 hertz that you can feel really well, and 250 hertz, because different parts of the body respond differently to different frequencies. And then, of course, intensity in there too. This is a little bit of an expanding version of the dot, but like I said, we can also just show you the real things. But we've also got some sensors on there to have two-way communication go through, and these are meant to be strung together. So like each kit comes with 4 different dots that communicate with what we call El Jefe. It was a nickname that just kind of stuck throughout development and made it all the way to the end. But it's battery powered. You can do it wired or with Bluetooth. And there's also 3D printable attachments and different ways that you can do it that. And then there's some software and SDK, a Unity asset, a few different things in terms of how to interact with it, or create what we call like multi-energy haptic tracks. So this is just a little bit of a quick demo that can be done right out of the box, where using some of the software, but there's actually dots on both the front and the back of the wrist. And this demo, I think, was being played and synchronized with the famous classical piece Nocturne that I'm sure many people will recognize. So a few different possibilities, can be anything from watch elements to do like a multi-energy haptic timepiece. There's possibilities of doing things like pendants or something that can be wearable that way. There's headbands that can be made, tying it into virtual reality. So this is a couple just arm sleeves. So I'll kind of stop it there because we're going to get more into the attachments. So that's my quick little crash course. For the more technical stuff, we had 3 work sessions already. I think there's YouTube videos with a playlist that we recommend going back and checking out because it'll give a good I don't know, I'll say a good overview of everything we've done to date. Anything that you can see I'm missing on Azalea?
No, it's great. We do have the recordings from the previous workshops. If you are curious, want to go back, they're on the Texas Immersive YouTube channel. We will link them on the BuildFest Discord, but I will also email you an invite just if you have not gotten into that one. They will be also on the Discord, so you can ask them questions, connect, be friends. Yeah, I think that about covers it. Your team has to be a team of about 5 members, hopefully. You all will get a dev kit and an Alienware laptop that we're gonna have for you. So you can use it, but you can also bring your own PCs as well.
During the thing, there will also be some 3D access to 3D printers as well as Azalea. Is that correct?
We have one 3D printer in the TXI lab, but also we are encouraging people to either go to the Foundry or Texas Invention Works also has a lot of 3D printers that you can get trained on. So you can take advantage of that. But I know they are open Monday through Friday, I believe. So BuildFest starts on a Friday. Just be, I guess, mindful if you will need to 3D print stuff in advance, do it this upcoming week before the event starts. If not, you will have to make a line in the TXI lab to print.
Okay. So we will have various different attachments and things like that, but for anything that people want to customize, we will give 3D printable files that people can go and tweak and change depending on what types of form factors and things you want.
Will you be sharing the files that like you recommend for them to use before next Friday? Or do they have to wait till the day of BuildFest?
I think they're ready to go, aren't they, Charles, for a bunch of them?
Yeah, we could share just like kind of the base attachments and then you
Yeah.
have the step files, right? Lee? You can share those.
Yeah.
Those are parametric.
Yeah.
And essentially you can add or subtract and use whatever CAD package you want to just kind of use that as a starting point. But yeah, I think that'd be fine.
Yeah.
I'll post them on the Discord, on the BuildFest Discord.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so just to go over the quick little bit of the plan, Charles will be showcasing the attachments, some of that stuff, go into different form factors a little bit, and then we want to go into just some brainstorming ideation stuff so that ideas can just start flowing. We're happy to give a little bit of a like we don't want to tell you what to do or not do, but we might also say like that's very ambitious for a weekend thing. Or if you want to do that, that just means prepping a little bit beforehand, maybe 3D printing stuff this week, maybe bringing in, like if you already have parts of projects that could tie in, then it becomes something that is feasible, right? So, you know, there's only a certain amount of things that can be done in a short amount of time, but we don't want that to necessarily limit ambition. We just want to make sure that at the end there's something that comes out of it that can be showcased and works. So we'll be happy to go into a little bit of the brainstorming and then extended Q&A for anybody. And that's the plan for today. Was there anything that you were also wanting to throw in at the end, Azalea, or?
I guess at the end I'll show the BuildFest website in case that anyone wants to register, but we also have 2 iPads and I'll put the QR code if you want to join the Discord right away as well.
Okay. Perfect. Well, without further ado, I'll stop talking and pass you off to Charles. Take it away, Charles.
Okay. Noticed last time there were quite a few mechanical engineers. Do we have any mechies here today?
One.
One. All right. How much CAD experience do you have, and what CAD package do you guys use at UTA?
SolidWorks.
SolidWorks. Okay, good. That's what I use in school, so hopefully you'll be right at home. Um, okay, either way, not too much to talk about with regards to attachments. It's really a matter of what how you want to attach it to whatever you're making. So kind of the base, I'll pull up a model of this as well if you can't see this, but this is kind of the basic attachment style for the default dot, and you guys can look at the dev kit that's at that front table too, that you guys have in person. Are those all, yeah, those are all individually unplugged. You could potentially pass those around if people haven't seen those, so they're not on cables or anything. But what's on there is there's a couple of wings that you can attach a watch strap to, and there's a couple of mounting spots for an external heatsink if you want to do that. But essentially, that center black layer can be kind of replaced as needed. And like we mentioned a second ago, we'll give you a base step file for that, so you can kind of add whatever you need to it and then print it out as needed. And then I'll show the model as well after I show this one. So I guess this one is one that has an external heatsink on it. We'll have a couple of these available, but these don't come default with the dev kit. But this essentially is the same dot, just utilizing those mounting holes to add this extra plate of heat sinking and fins to the top side. So, with this attachment, you have much better thermal performance. So potentially better than you would need for some projects, just kind of depending on what projects you have in mind. So I'm gonna pull up the model in a second. You guys can see this, right? So I use SolidWorks as well, so that fits good. This essentially is a model of the dot with the external heatsink. So essentially what you guys have is just this base dot by itself, and all that's going on here is there's just a couple main pieces, right? There's the heatsink itself, the aluminum part, and then there's this center section, this black section that is kind of the primary thing that you can redesign and change out that kind of affects the overall form factor and what you can mount it to. So essentially what we'll do is give you the model for all the basic ones. And this would just be like the most basic, right? The default that you can use as a starting place to put whatever you want kind of on the outside, depending on if you're going to try to do some kind of fabric integration or just going to use, some mounting holes or whatever you want to do there. So this will be kind of a base example. And then so these 4 mounting holes on that default attachment are for this external heatsink that you'll have the option of using, or if you want to design your own heatsink with your own attachments, of course, that's possible as well. I don't know if you guys have, we'll be able to CNC machine anything in a weekend, but up to you guys. Any questions so far just regarding that stuff? There's not too much beyond that, to be honest, but essentially this main center section is what's the easiest to replace to kind of accommodate different mounting styles and stuff.
The one thing I'll
So-
also just add on there is depending on the colors and translucence of any of the materials, you can direct light so that it goes and is easily visible on the side, whether it's directed towards the skin. So it's also a thing of whether you want clear sides, whether you want colored sides, and later on I can show some different attachments, and Charles can too, like in the physical sense. But I'm just mentioning it because there is some of the construction and color schemes and such based on what you actually want to accomplish as well.
Like Lee was just saying, there's actually, so typically the sides are opaque on the kits that you have, but there's actually LEDs on the side of the circuit board as well. I don't know if you can see this well, but there's, yeah, like he said, if you make the outside ring translucent, it'll light up pretty bright.
This is an example of translucent ones, but then like you can also do different colors, different things if for however you want. Or let's see, this one's the bottom is clear to direct downwards. There's different options that way. Out of the files it will be giving, there's just the perfectly round ones. There's ones that are more for watch straps. There's ones that are more designed like this for Velcro and so on. And then there's even this one might be hard to see, but there's ridges on it that give to the ability to screw into something. So this is an example of if you are going to want to put it into something rigid with something like this, you will need to manipulate the files so that the thing you're screwing it into either matches this or that you change what this is to be able to connect to something rigid. So examples of that, like that just come to the top of the mind are like anything that would be like a rigid knee brace or certain things like that. So it just hopefully will highlight that some of these might require a little bit of extra 3D printable work, but any of the more traditional form factors, we should have them all kind of ready for you. They will run out at some point just because we can't come with every color, give everyone all the clear ones, all the different attachments. But you know, this we'll try and bring as good of a amount as we can, and then there will also be some 3D printable stuff too. We will also add that El Jefe itself, we have the same basic design where it's the solid metal top, and then the sides can also be 3D printable. So if you want to add say a space for Velcro to be strapped to, there's various little things. So not only is there the models that can be changed into to add say little loops or wings or various things there. There's also just anything outside of these that kind of goes into if you want to make pockets into a shirt or something, if you want to do something with arm sleeves and start taking things like this that you can put your arm through and then cut it up and do whatever. Like, so there's lots of kind of hacky things because we do want these to be able to be placed kind of anywhere on the body, to hide wires, to do whatever you need from there. So that'll be part of the fun part of the weekend, is just how do you actually want to wear these things, where do you want them, and that all goes into part of the the design and the solution and what gets tied into. We don't want to just tell you this is how you have to wear our devices. So we really are trying to use the body as a canvas for any solutions that you want on there. But yeah, I think that's maybe it for any of the 3D models. Do you think of anything else, Ross?
Nope.
Okay. Maybe the other thing, and if we start going into form factors a little bit, which is a slight different, and I'll just tee this up, but there is a possibility of having these things into something more rigid that you hold. So if it's something that's interactive, like if you kind of want to have it tie into something that is like a sword or a lightsaber and put these things in, there are possibilities of adding physical pieces to whatever you might want to do or tell, or tie it into arms of a chair, or various things that can kind of be done in certain ways. There's other things that I'm sure Charles will be able to speak a lot to, especially the weekend of, but just everything needs a skin facing side or something that you're touching, and then also a way to dissipate heat. So that's just one of the big considerations for anything else that wants to be done. But I'm also quite curious and interested to see what types of just other form factors people actually want to use these in, and that type of thing. So Often it's just teeing up more ideas and then sensing feasibility for that and for any of the projects. But it's more of just a way of saying there's lots of different ways to use it. They each have different potential challenges. But that's where opening up the 3D models and everything for you to be able to match to 3D print to do anything that way comes in.
Do you guys have any questions about the product, about the capabilities? It was like a very, very quick introduction, so feel free to ask questions about how it works, any, potential applications if you are curious, if you don't have an idea yet of what you want to build. Now it's your time to ask.
Yeah, I guess, can you go over the sensors and the different haptic options provided?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did leave out that part. So the primary ones are just gonna be the temperature sensors on the contact plate and the heat sink. So you'll know your temperature differential. And then potentially I will be updating all your dots with firmware that lets you read the IMU data. There's a couple of kind of data processing issues there, but essentially, if we get that good to go, it'll be 3 axes of accelerometer, X, Y, and Z, and then 3 axis of the gyroscope. So angular speed. That's yeah. I mean, those are going to be the primary ones.
Yeah, for sensor output. And then the other thing is you can tie in any other sensor data that you can come in with as well. So we did mention it on one of the other calls, but using things like sensors in cell phones, using sensors in various different wearables as well, and tying any of those things can be really handy. So if any of you have things that you want to tie in, or heart rate monitors, or any of those things, there's a lot of cool stuff that can be done just in the software side and interplay between various different sensors that can be tied in outside of our ecosystem as well. So that's often something to look at and tie into as well for various different various different elements that you put in. And then, did you also have a question on the outputs as well, or more just the? Okay, did you want to touch more on the details of the outputs, Charles? I went through faster. I can do it.
Why don't you give it a shot, Lee?
Yeah. So, for vibration, there's two vibrating elements in there. They generate about 3 Gs of force directed towards the skin, with about 150 hertz to 250 hertz is roughly what can target, and you can specifically target whichever frequencies in there you want. There's also, I think, 142 presets that come in to mimic like button clicks, some ramping up, some ramping down, some of those, all with the vibration. And then for thermal, I'm based in Canada, so I like Celsius, but we get down to had it around like 4 degrees, which is just above freezing, and can hold that for a meaningful amount of time. And then go up to, we cap it at 47 degrees Celsius that way, just because it starts getting too hot. And then full spectrum LEDs across 16 of them for that way. So, and basically any hex code goes into that. And then, yeah, did that answer your questions? That's the different outputs. Perfect.
I had a question when it comes to the hot and cold. Is
Yes.
what here we had hot on one side, cold on the other side. Is there a way to kind of invert that, or make sure that it's hot on both sides or cold on both sides?
So just so I'm understanding, you mean like on this side of the dot was cold and then hot here?
It was reversed when we had it, but yeah. I think. Not sure.
this side would always get hot, but go ahead, Charles, on that.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
fundamentally, you're pumping heat from one side to the other. So if you want the contact plate to be cold on the bottom, it's going to be pulling heat towards the top side. So if you turn it on to heating mode, then it's going to pump heat from the top side to the bottom side, and it's going to, they essentially have to be opposites at all times. Now that being said, there's some, Peltier devices are not very efficient. So in general, your device is going to heat up kind of overall. That's, part of why the heat dissipation is important. But fundamentally, how it works is they are trying to drive that temperature differential. So by making the bottom side cool, it's going to necessarily make the opposite side warmer. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going with the question is there a way without flipping the dot itself for a person to feel hot and cold with just touching one surface?
Yeah. Yeah, you can just
Uh,
you can just make the contact plate hot instead of cold, through software. Essentially, there's like a 0 to 1 value or a -1 to +1 value. So -1 will tell it to go max cold, and +1 will tell it to go max heat on that very same surface.
Yeah. Yeah, always on that little skin contact plate. So that one can change from hot to cold. And that, like we said, it's to go to hot, you can get about 2 degrees per second, like 1.5 to 2 degrees per second. When it's ramping down to cold, it's less efficient just because of the technology, but it still can be about 0.5 degree to 1 degree per second. Um, and be able to fluctuate that way. But it's like we've optimized it so that the skin facing side is what changes easily, and then the heat sink is always going to be a bit more on the hot side from there. But yeah, the whole purpose is to make sure that we can do both fairly easily, and then yeah, just with the bigger heat sink, it's just better and more effective at that.
It makes sense that you would have to keep the heat sink like accessible to the air in order to actually transmit that heat, right? Is it advisable to build an actual heat sink so that it can transmit temperature faster?
You could, yeah, absolutely. Like if you want very, very good thermal performance, like freezing level, like sustained freezing level temperatures, then yeah, you would have to have active cooling on the top side, which you could absolutely do if you wanted to.
Yeah, I'll hold this up, which is with one of our partner companies called Hyperice, but they basically, it's not our dots in here, but it's basically a same technology, and they have fans that are constantly running, and this is for basically icing knees. So it's a knee brace that goes on, and they can keep it running cold. Um, as long as the batteries are still going. They don't need the fans on when it's going hot, um, just because of efficiency of the technology. But for, that's definitely one of the things that can be done during the build fest, is depending on the purpose, depending on how far you want to push it. A heatsink is a great way of doing it, and that's also with the attachment elements and those parts that you can screw into with some thermal paste. We'd be interested to see how far you can push some of these things in the different form factors with the heat sinks.
Are those 3D models available?
We will be making those available this week coming up, so that you can do some of the printing and playing around and doing all that as well. We could probably give the heatsink one too if somebody wants to start machining their own things or so on. But yeah, it'll help depend a lot, and maybe even I'll say be critical depending on what wants to be built at the end. If it's sustained cold for any meaningful amount of time, our heatsink does a pretty good job, but if you really want to push it, it would be advisable for a fan.
Yeah, we can release a model, I think, Lee, for the whole dot and the and this production heatsink and everything.
labs here, are not open over the weekends, so building it on BuildFest weekend would be rough. So
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
during the week would be really nice.
There's so are there gonna be printers available on the weekend or no?
There was one, I think, as Alia said, on the Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay.
Printer that you will be able to use if you hang out with me, be my friend, I'll open the lab for you. It's just one though, and there's a limited amount of filaments in there, just know that. So I highly recommend either Texas Invention Works open during the week, or the Foundry, which I believe might also be open during the week, but not the weekend.
And but like we will try and bring a whole bunch of attachments, but we just, we can't guarantee we'll have exactly what people need. So I think that the best is to try and see, to try and use what we have first, and then if people really need the 3D printer, then to make sure that's available. But if there are form factors or things and that are really important, just ask. We'll be on Discord, so just let us know what you think you need, and we'll tell you whether we'd have something or whether that's something you need to do to tie it in as well.
But just for background, so everybody knows, just in case, the social impact topic for the year is libraries, right? And at first it's like, how do you combine libraries and haptics? So we're thinking the future of libraries, right? How to think about these spaces as a third place where the community come together to experience libraries in a new way, right? And that could also be new ways to experience literacy, or when you think about how you learn to read is in a very traditional sense, but how could you enhance that experience maybe with haptics or temperature, vibration, or even take it a step further, think about accessibility or inclusivity. Maybe someone who's visually impaired, how could they benefit from a haptic experience when reading or experiencing the library world, right? So some ideas that have come up is using another thing, let me go back. Another thing that the Bateman Every Library social impact topic for this year is about freedom of information. So fighting against book bans, just kind of important these days and age. So that could be storytelling, taking a story that has been banned for another reason and do accessibility of experiencing that story in a different way, right? It could be there's an idea floating around that I don't know if a team has already claimed it, or they're building something similar, a storytelling pod, a cozy cave where you can experience a story, perhaps with audio, perhaps reading, and incorporate haptics to the story that you're reading, multi-language, which is kind of cool. Another one is about library exhibition and finding a book that has been banned, and perhaps putting something on your hand, putting something on the books that whenever you're touching it, the temperature changes, the colors change. Have you ever played the hot cold game when you're getting close? It's hot, and everyone's yelling, and it's very intense. Something like that could be interesting, finding a book that it's banned for some reason, or something similar. And then story pop-up books, it's another one, think about, doesn't have to be a flat experience, 2D, it could be a 3D experience with pop-ups, definitely you can incorporate the 3D printing assets to that. We're not putting a limit into the things that you can bring. If you want to 3D print stuff, if you want to use reusable, clothing items that you have, you can bring it as a team together, try to make something happen. Yeah, as long as you incorporate the DataFeel dev kits and think about it in the social impact brief that they will present on Friday, give you more information and how you are solving one problem in that mission, in that concept. If you make it even more accessible and more inclusive to the community, even better, right? So those are a few ideas that I'm just throwing out there for the world to take. But what are you guys thinking?
I mean, we're making the egg idea that was on the original presentation, so it doesn't do me much good to hide it.
That's true. We are gonna present that on Friday too.
However,
You wanna share anything?
we have a little twist to it, and that twist is gonna be our competitive advantage. But I will tell you guys that we are using some eye trackers to figure out where you are on the page and activate the haptic equipment based on what you are reading in the active moment.
That's cool. I like it.
What I think it'll be nice to just take a little bit of a break too before we go in, but I do want to touch on Azalea's suggestion of just almost doing a bit of a brainstorm for about 5 minutes or so, but I'll add in a couple of themes that do really tie into libraries. One theme is shared experiences amongst people, whether that is like just for example, if two people are in different spots but experiencing the same thing, they feel closer. So like a good example that we saw a lot during COVID, for example, was people just like buying the same beer at two different parts of the world and drinking the same one. It feels like they're closer and more connected, right? So shared experiences with stories, with conversations, like those things. Also, when you tie more senses to information, people retain it better, right? So the more immersive, the more felt something is, the more they'll remember things, right? So those are just some overall themes as well that can be used. And then also, like, if you just think about libraries, they have everything from audio to video to books to to VR to different experiences that way too. So like just if you kind of think of everything that is available in a library and why it's there, or for people to gather, to share, to converse, to all that, like there is a lot of potential ways of going. But I feel like this might be a good way, because I want to do a little bit more of an extended QA at the end, but ideation I think is great. Sound good?
Sounds like a plan.
Perfect.
Put a full timer over here.
Okay.
All right. So guys, I have a whiteboard over here. I have markers if you want to come up. I have snacks as well. That was worth it. I think that was worth it. How's it going, Mark?
I like the choice of music and timer.
I just Googled like 15-minute timer to put like the normal Google timer. And then it was like, do you want a Valentine's theme? I'm like, wow, you knew that I wanted it before I even knew I wanted it, you know? So I'm like, yes, I do. How did it go? Any cool brainstorm session ideas or questions that arise?
Well, one idea that we had, it was kind of like what you had talked about. What if like maybe you have like gloves with the dots in them, and you like kind of input like what kind of books you're looking for, and it's like a hot and cold scenario like as you're going through, and it'll get like warmer or colder depending on if the book like fits the genre of what you're looking for.
Ah, like a niche genre.
Yeah, I mean it's for me, that's definitely something doable. You know, it could be gloves, it could be anything really. But definitely a possibility. Do you just, I mean, to take it a step further or two, what do you think you'd actually need to tie in together, aside from our dots themselves? Like what parts do you think would be required to put those together, or people.
Something to like transmit pretty quickly, and accurate like data, like where the gloves are, like in respect to like where like different book genres are. I don't really know. I guess you could probably. I don't really know what you would be able to use to like transmit that kind of data quickly though.
Yeah, I mean, for me, there's a couple different potential options, and this is like why I'm also diving a bit further, is these are good things for ideation, but for example, even things like for prototyping with an air tag or one of those location tags, where it might be able to get proximity for your phone fairly easy, and then start figuring out, well, how do we get that information to the dev kits or different places. But that's one of the technologies that could be used. GPS works really well outdoors, indoors not so much. There are other indoor technologies. I think some of those might be harder harder to try and get done in a weekend. But like, for example, it's just a better version of what's in AirTags, but much more complex for real-time 3D location. But that, it doesn't mean that those aren't also possibilities. But like, I could just see something like an AirTag, or the equivalent for Android, being something that could be simple and easy to tie in with a few of those.
The packaging of the sensor, I know we can like modify it, and you were talking about how we can CAD it as well. I was wondering if you could also like internally, like, I know it's probably not feasible within 3 days, but also like do like sort of like a flex PCB application, just so then it'd be easier to embed in other systems and stuff like that. Or like on surfaces like skin. I know like there's like a professor here at UT Austin, Professor Liu, she does like electronic tattoos, so she kind of does like a flex application as well for like sensors to monitor heart rate. So I was wondering, like, that's also applicable for these.
Yeah, I mean, definitely in theory you could lay it out on like into any form factor you wanted. I don't know if we'll release the schematic files for this exactly, but certainly it's possible. And like you said, it'd be tough in a weekend, but um, absolutely we've experimented definitely with flex PCBs a little bit here and there. There's other design challenges with that, just in terms of kind of making sure you have rigidity in the places that you need rigidity, and just the longevity of the circuits and all that. But yeah, definitely we could do a lot more miniaturization. We could do a lot with flex boards. We could do a lot of any of that. But yeah, it's essentially just a matter of what exact product or application you're going for that would kind of dictate that. But so essentially for this one, we decided a rigid board is just a little easier to work with for this. But yeah, certainly I do want to do some more flex board stuff in the future.
Yeah, and the thing I'll just add there too is like, there's always trade-offs with various things, but there's also ways of ways around it until you get to the expensive places of, like, really designing PCB boards on different materials, right? Because for example, like, there are ways of using the dev kit where, if it's the thermal side, like just extending the wires and putting them somewhere else, but then of course you still need a heat sink or a way of doing it, so you can kind of separate the board from the parts that vibrate and different pieces, or like, there's lots of different ways of designing what a final solution would be for that. And that's some of the stuff that with more customized projects and such, as you can tell, Charles is super excited to go down those paths with anyone that's looking at doing these things as well. But yeah, there's lots of different trade-offs. We did try some flexi PCB boards and stuff as well. There's challenges, there's benefits, but ultimately we went with something rigid in form factor anyways. So the boards, we just went with rigid ones because they're much easier to work with and more stable that way. But yeah, it's like it in terms of ideation, and what we like about this is, if the boards are flexible, now there opens up more possibilities as well, right? So we love doing a lot of that ideation stuff with the same kind of base technologies as us.
Like, it's so cool. You were talking about how you were using the dev kits to ice knees, because I used to be a figure skater. And so like, if I had that and I was able to like carry that around with me, I had so many knee issues, it would have been so helpful.
Well, you can buy the hyper ice one that's there. They don't do vibration or some other things that we feel provide benefits kind of for next generation stuff. But yeah, with the heat sinks that we have with the dev kit and such, especially being able to fluctuate between heat and cold, you can start finding with cold, like, pain management, reduction of swelling, but then you can increase blood flow with heat, relax muscles. So there's different ways of I'll say controlling those outputs, and then different vibrations, different frequencies. Like, to go deeper into some of that, it's different tissues respond to different frequencies, different vibrations, nerves respond to different ones. So there's like a lot of really cool deep dives that can be done to improve a product like that Hyperice one, for example. Commercially viable products and prototypes, there's lots of different things to go in there, but I've had 3 knee surgeries at different points, so I do know it's also why I picked this Hyperice product to test and use. But there's some cool applications for sure on that side. Hyperice has some huge athlete endorsements and investors and stuff for them, so a lot of them really do understand the benefits of this. And for our dev kits, like I've definitely played around with it, and one of the other kind of he's an advisor but investor. He played in the NFL and also is a Harvard trained orthopedic surgeon with some pretty high-end clientele based out of Florida. So that's part of why he was interested in us, was because he saw a lot of those therapeutic uses, both from the medical side, but
Yeah,
athletes too.
definitely in general, sports therapy is like a huge vertical for us. So we don't personally have anything productized, like ready to go. We have essentially B2B partners that will, we're in the process of kind of combining into a product using our tech. So, we don't personally have like a sports brace readily available, but yeah, definitely like a really huge focus for us is that kind of icing knee brace and similar kind of things like that.
Yeah, or shoulders, elbows, whatever, right? Like there's a lot of possibilities. But the other thing is, like, part of why we did the dev kits and why we're doing all this stuff is to spark ideas, so other people that find uses or have passions behind all these different things, that to help I'll say that to help start or test or do all those things. So like that's the type of things we want to support, is people that understand the problems in so many different ways, and then look to expand from there.
Here's the whole idea behind the BuildFest and TXI, is to be able to provide you with a place and the tools to get some ideas started and just like start building something. Even if it's just for a weekend, you will still get to work with great people, interdisciplinary. I was just looking at the people that registered. There's an opera director that registered. I'm like, oh my God, that's so exciting. Because that's my background. But it's gonna be fun weekend. Other ideas.
I guess something that I thought of was just if you had like a database of a couple different books and went through like chapter by chapter or something, and figured an overall emotion of the chapter and like an intensity or something, could tap your phone on the book and it'll go over a short overview of like how that book results, I guess. I don't know.
There's lots of very high-tech applications. There's also very low-tech applications on various things, and sentiment of a book. It's a pretty easy database to be able to create, right? And to say, okay, well, what's a synopsis of a few different books, and then decide, well, how do you want to match outputs to it, right? Like there can even be from everything to feeling to for example, I'm just thinking like kids' books are a good place to start sometimes of if it's about the seasons and weather, you can just have them feel different weather types as the book goes on. And winter, it's cold. You can feel that it's cold. Summer is hot, right? Like, so sometimes thinking like a kid and what's the very basic building blocks of things, then it's easy to expand of, okay, now we can understand weather. How do we understand what happiness or sadness or tension or mystery, like what would some of those haptics be like? And I think that can be really cool and creative, right? So there's lots of different things just because books are stories. So I think there's lots of cool places to go with that sometimes with a build fest especially, it's nice to start super simple and then add complexity as you have more time throughout the weekend.
Well, my question was about the little dots. Like I know that they do like thermal or like cooling, and I think I remember something being mentioned about like mimicking the feeling of like a button, like you can press a button or something. And I was wondering like what all are the capabilities of like the feelings it can replicate on?
So yeah, it's a good question because there's I think it depends how accurate you want it to be, right? So for the vibrations, some of the presets it'll be like click or double click, right? So it's meant to kind of mimic like a click of a button. There's also ones that can kind of quickly ramp up and then stop. So why I mention it is some is to mimic something, some is just patterns that you can potentially string together. Um, but I'll say in my experience, and Charles can also speak to it, that sometimes it just being kind of close to replicating something, but then you pair it with the right sound, and now it feels very accurate. Or you pair it with the right visual, and now it feels more immersive. So even if they're sometimes kind of not very accurate, but you pair it with the right things, you get a really good experience or timing. So I know I'm sort of answering the question a little bit, but it's almost think of those little haptic bits as tiny building blocks that if you have a ramp down or a ramp up and a ramp down, or a double click or single click, but you start pairing these together, it's a bit of imagination of what does this actually mean and relate to. But I don't remember what's all in that list for specifics. Do you, Charles?
For the vibration library thing?
Yeah.
No, I mean there's like, yeah, I mean at the end of the day, essentially it uses little vibration modules with very specific waveforms and like very high accelerations to like simulate that button click feeling, but it all is all just done by the vibration. And then, like Lee was saying, there's like click effects you can do, and then there's like longer like transition effects and buzzing and humming effects. And if you don't want to use those, there's manual ways to control it as well. But there's not yeah, does that answer your question, or were we kind of off base?
Yeah. I will add one more thing to that, and it's part of why we wanted multi-energy stuff is, for example, if you have the same vibration, like if you kind of have what would almost be like a light tapping, but then if you add a little bit of cold to that space, and then for a scene or sound, you have rain. Now that bit of cold really can enhance what that vibration means, right? But you remove any one of these pieces, and it's almost like a little bit of the puzzle. So that's part of where the creativity can come in with using these different things. Where only vibration, you might still convince someone that it's rain with sound and something else, right? If you add the cold, that probably gives a better thing. If you want it to be warm, but now you're feeling like you're in a shower, then it's more convincing you're in a shower, right? Like, so there's different ways of using these individual building blocks to tell a story. If you want to learn more about the other pieces, do look back at some of those videos that we put in, because the longer that all takes at BuildFest, the less time you actually will have to do the building and all of that stuff. So we want people to have as much time building, putting things together, and so on. So just it's more of just a way of saying the more you think about it and prep, and if you want to bring in any additional stuff, such as like mentioned an air tag, and if you're like, I might want to use some of that for something, let's look at just how air tag data can go to a phone and what we might be able to see or copy from there, so that there's already um some leads up to the actual event itself. But for me, like, I'm just excited to see what ideas come up, and we'll look to support you best we can throughout the weekend to take them as far as we can, and have a lot of fun along the way.
Thank you, Lee and Charles.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Excited for
Yeah.
next week, but I'll see you guys there in person. So good luck.